"You'll never make enough. You're just playing pretend." That's what he said. Then he laughed and walked out, leaving me staring at the cracked mug I dropped, my dreams shattered with it. But that was the moment something in me snapped. My name is Lila Morgan, and this is how I became the woman he now unknowingly calls boss. The story opens with 38-year-old Lila Morgan, sitting across from her husband Bradley, a smug financial analyst who constantly underestimates her. They've been married for 11 years, no children. She once had a spark, a passion for design and branding, but after years of being told she was just dabbling, she buried it beneath house chores and silence. Bradley mocks her latest business idea over dinner. She's just shared a potential concept, a boutique branding firm focused on women-led startups. Instead of support, he dismisses it with a scoff. "You think you'll make money drawing logos in your pajamas? Come on, Lila, be serious." The humiliation is familiar. It's been years of this. Brad dismissing her dreams, cutting her off in conversations, laughing when she talks about entrepreneurship like she's a child, mimicking adults. He doesn't hit her, doesn't scream, but his weapon is sharper, belittlement masked as logic. He makes her feel small using numbers and certainty. But that night, after she picks up the broken mug from the floor, she opens her laptop, not to cry, to start. Lila starts researching how to launch an LLC, reading articles on design strategy, brand identity, and small business funding. She signs up for webinars, watches tutorials at night, works while Bradley sleeps. He doesn't notice. Lila's voiceover explains how being underestimated was her fuel, that every insult became a brick, and she was building something behind his back. She uses her maiden name, Lila James, as her professional alias, a name he would never track. And then she lands her first client. "He told me I'd never make enough. I made more in that first month than he ever knew. But I said nothing, not yet." Bradley kept talking, kept mocking, kept believing I was still curled on the couch binge-watching daytime shows while he brought home real money. What he didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, was that by the time he slammed the front door each morning, I was on my second Zoom call with a client. I'd taken our spare bedroom and transformed it into a sleek home office. I branded it Shadow and Sage, not my name, not even my voice technically. I hired a virtual assistant to handle calls. I kept myself invisible, and business boomed. It started small. A yoga instructor in Seattle, a dog bakery in Austin, then a female-led law firm in Chicago needed a full rebrand. They loved my pitch. Signed without hesitation. I hired freelancers, quietly, efficiently. Within 6 months, I was generating 5 figures monthly, quietly. Brad never noticed the deposits. I had opened a separate business account under my LLC and paid myself a minimal wage, just enough to fly under his radar. He thought I was wasting time, and I let him. His arrogance was the perfect cover. The irony? The more successful I got, the less he respected me. There was this night, I remember it so clearly, where he came home complaining about his new junior analyst at the firm. "This girl keeps challenging my numbers, acting like she knows better. These women think they're smarter just because they've got a LinkedIn course under their belt." And I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Because what he didn't know was that I had just coached that exact woman, his junior analyst, on her personal brand, and helped her land a podcast deal. I was building a sisterhood quietly, strategically. While he kept laughing, I kept climbing. Then, 6 months in, I won a branding contract with a venture firm. A big one, 7 figures. They didn't want just a logo. They wanted a full rebranding suite, narrative, visuals, website, and identity for their entire portfolio of startups. I couldn't do it under Shadow and Sage. I needed a proper company. So I founded Halcyon North, a full creative consultancy. And here's the punchline. Their portfolio included a tech firm in transition, a firm Bradley's employer had just partnered with to improve internal culture and boost outreach. They reached out to Halcyon North, my company. Bradley was assigned to manage the project from the financial side, and still, he didn't know. My husband was about to start working under the company I built from scratch, and he didn't even know it was mine. He called. It's some overpriced consultancy with a fancy name. He mocked the budget, mocked the pitch deck, mocked the leadership, while sitting in our shared kitchen. And I just smiled, because I was about to walk into the building he'd been bragging about for years, not as his wife, but as his boss. The morning I walked into the boardroom, I wasn't Lila Morgan, his wife. I was Lila James, founder and creative director of Halcyon North. I wore a navy suit he'd never seen before, heels that echoed with purpose, and a confidence I hadn't felt since before I met him. My assistant trailed behind, holding a portfolio I'd spent months perfecting. Bradley didn't notice me at first. The boardroom was packed, 10 people from his firm, 4 from mine. He was too busy criticizing a slide in the presentation to look up, but when he did, his voice trailed off mid-sentence. His eyes narrowed, then widened. His jaw? It twitched. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. I gave him the most polite, detached nod, one professional to another. Good. Morning, everyone. I'm Lila James. I'll be leading this project from the brand side. You could have heard a pin drop. Bradley swallowed hard. He was silent the entire meeting. I clicked through the slides like a surgeon, precise, clear, assertive. I walked them through brand architecture, visual strategy, rollout timeline, cross-platform alignment. I never looked directly at him again, but I could feel his eyes on me the entire time. When the meeting ended, everyone started filtering out, chattering about deadlines and next steps. Bradley lingered. He stood up slowly, hesitantly, and finally approached. Lila, what is this? Is this a joke? I didn't answer with words. I just pulled out a card, my card. Lila James, founder, Halcyon North. You said I'd never make enough. Turns out, I made more than enough. And I walked away. No anger, no raised voice, just facts, power, presence. Later that night, he didn't come home. I didn't ask where he went. I didn't care. He stayed silent for 3 days. When he finally returned, the first thing he asked was, "How long have you been doing this?" I didn't tell him about the broken mug, or the insult that sparked it all. I didn't owe him the origin story. I told him the truth, short and brutal. Long enough to become someone you don't recognize. He didn't laugh. He didn't argue. For the first time in years, he looked scared. After that meeting, something in Bradley shifted. He stopped making snide comments. He stopped talking altogether, really. He just watched. At first, it was passive. He'd hover in doorways while I worked. Quiet footsteps in the hall. Coffee cups left outside my office door, like some clumsy peace offering. But I wasn't interested in peace. I was interested in truth, in power, in myself. For years, I had waited for his approval like air. Now, I didn't even flinch when he walked past me. It unnerved him. He started checking my laptop when I left the room. I knew because I'd planted a browser tab with nothing but a quote. Success is the best revenge. He saw it. I saw him see it. Still, I said nothing. Then, at a dinner with his colleagues, things turned public. I had been invited as part of Halcyon's consulting team. Bradley didn't know until he arrived and saw me already seated at the table, engaged in deep conversation with his boss's boss. He tried to regain control, told a loud story, mocked those who think branding is real business, and threw a pointed glance my way. But the room didn't laugh. His superior interrupted him. Actually, Lila's approach is why this partnership is working. We've never seen our numbers shift this quickly. That was the first time I saw it on his face. Panic. The room clapped. I smiled. He stayed silent. After that night, his work at the firm began to unravel. First, a missed deadline, then a flubbed report. Then he snapped at a junior analyst, the same woman he once mocked. She reported him. I watched his unraveling like someone watching an old wallpaper peel, quietly, methodically. He came home one night drunk, bitterness hanging off him like cologne. You think you're better than me now? I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to think I was. I knew I was. I'd just been too polite for too long to say it out loud. The next morning, I got a call from HR at his firm. We're restructuring, and Bradley's role is being dissolved. Would Halcyon consider bringing him on temporarily? Freelance, maybe? The silence between her words screamed. They were asking if I wanted to hire my husband, the same man who told me I'd never make enough. I paused. Then I said the boldest thing I'd ever said. Let me think about it, because power isn't just built, it's chosen. 3 weeks later, he walked into my office building, not as my husband, but as an applicant. Bradley didn't know that the interview he was attending was with me. He'd received a formal email from Halcyon North's HR department inviting him to discuss a temporary consultant role, one that I had personally orchestrated. I watched him through the glass as he sat in the waiting room, legs bouncing, fingers twitching. He looked older somehow, like the weight of watching his ego unravel had aged him. He wasn't wearing his usual smug confidence. He was wearing uncertainty. My assistant walked him in and closed the door behind him. His eyes met mine. He froze. You? He muttered, already pale. I didn't offer a smile, just gestured toward the chair opposite my desk. Sit. For a moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, he did. The silence was thick, but I wasn't there to comfort him. I was there to make something clear. You told me I'd never make enough. You told me I was wasting time. You told me I was just a housewife. Now you're sitting in front of me, asking for work. His lips parted, but I raised my hand before he could speak. No apologies. Not here. This isn't our kitchen table. This is my company. And you're not my husband in this room. You're an unemployed consultant with a record of undermining women in leadership. So let me ask you, Bradley, why should I hire you? He was sweating. The confident man who used to laugh at my ambition was now gripping the edge of my desk for support. He stumbled through some rehearsed lines. I've grown. I understand branding now. I'm adaptable. But they rang hollow. When he finished, I nodded slowly and stood up. Thank you. We'll let you know. He blinked. That's it? That's all. As I opened the door to signal the meeting was over, his voice cracked. Lila, please. I turned back to him one last time. This is what it feels like. To sit across from someone who knows your worth. I hope someday you know what that feels like too. He stood to leave. His hands were shaking. That was the moment I knew. The power dynamic had flipped, and there was no going back. He used to walk ahead of me like I was invisible. Now, every step he took away from me was a silent apology he'd never have the courage to say aloud. I could have let him go. Could have told HR to reject his application. Could have watched him spiral out of work, out of pride, and out of my life completely. But that's not what I did. Because what he never realized is that I don't destroy people the way they destroy me. I let them live with it. I told HR to hire him, under a different department, one with no access to me, no say in branding, and no decision-making. Power. A quiet back-end consultant role buried under layers of reporting. The pay? Modest. The contract? Temporary. The title? Forgettable. Bradley started working at my company the following Monday. He came in through the back elevator, sat at a shared desk, and answered to a woman 15 years younger than him, one of my first hires. A woman he once scoffed at during a networking dinner. He didn't even know I reviewed every project he touched. I watched him through the office glass sometimes. Head down, shoulders slumped, no bravado left. Just a man clocking into a job run by a woman he once mocked into silence. And yet, he never said a word. We barely spoke at home. The silence between us wasn't cold, it was brittle. One breath, and it could shatter. One evening, I walked into the living room as he sat on the couch, watching some old finance show he used to quote like scripture. The volume was low. His eyes were distant. He looked up at me and asked softly, Do you hate me? I paused, then answered as calmly as I've ever spoken in my life. No, I just finally love myself more than I fear disappointing you. That's when I knew it was over. Not in rage, not in revenge. In peace. In power. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't begging for space in my own story. The next morning, I left the keys on the kitchen counter. The house, the ring, the name, it could all stay. I had bigger things to build. It's been 8 months since I walked out of that house. And in that time, I've opened a second branch of Halcyon North, hired 20 new employees, launched a mentorship program for young women in business. And Bradley? He's still there, quiet, nameless, folded into a team where his opinions are no longer gospel, where every decision he makes goes through someone else, usually someone younger, sharper, and female. Every Friday, I see his name on internal updates. And every time, I scroll past it like it's just another piece of data, because it is. He once said I'd never make enough, that I'd always depend on him. Now, he depends on the very company he mocked. He walks into a building every morning, bearing my initials on the wall. He eats lunch beneath a mission statement I wrote. He clocks hours for a woman he never truly saw until she no longer needed him to. Some people ask me if it ever gets awkward, if it feels strange to have my ex-husband working for me. But the truth is, I don't think about him much. I think about the women who email me saying, "You inspired me to try again." I think about the interns who walk into our office wide-eyed and brave. I think about that night with the broken mug, and how from that tiny moment of humiliation, I built an empire brick by brick, with no help, no shortcuts, and no permission. He laughed. He called me small. Now he works under my name, and I don't even flinch when I pass him in the hallway. Because success isn't the loudest voice in the room. It's the one who keeps speaking even after they've been silenced. It's the woman who walks away, not to escape, but to rise. And me? I didn't just rise. I soared,